Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited here at Generation UCAN to be kicking off Women's Health Week. This is an extremely exciting time for us. We have a week's worth of content for you, a number of different webinars coming up tonight. We're going to be talking about staying young and healthy for women at every age. And I am super excited. My name is Karin Hosenfeld. I am a board certified sports dietitian and vice president of nutrition for Generation UCAN, and I am joined tonight by Dr. Cathy Yeckel. I want to tell you, thanks for joining Dr. Yeckel, by the way, you're on here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk up you a little bit for a moment for those people out there who might not be familiar with who you are and what your research has been extensive over the years. And ladies, you will want to really listen up to what Dr. Yeckel has to say, because she has really dedicated so many years of her time to this kind of research that benefits all of us as we age. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Yeckel. She's an assistant clinical professor at the Yale School of Medicine, Yale School of Public Health. She received a master's degree in exercise physiology from the University of Pittsburgh and a doctoral degree from UTMB in Galveston, in my home state of Texas, in preventative medicine and community health, in this is important for us, human metabolism and nutrition. She knows her stuff. She's here to help us out. She's focused her research interest in these last years on this spectrum of insulin resistance, beta cell dysfunction. That's really super important. We have a growing population who are struggling with everything, their weight, stress-related eating. These are people that have come to see me in my practice for years, and she just really has been studying the consequence of obesity from young to old age and from sedentary to physically active. It's all across the spectrum. So many of you that have tuned in are on a completely different age group or spectrum than other people, and Dr. Yeckel's research and her experience is going to be really key here to understanding some of these key concepts. You're going to learn a lot tonight. What I would recommend is definitely grab a pen and a piece of paper. Take some notes, some things that are going to speak to you, might not speak to other women in certain age groups and different stages in their lives. So you really want to take note of those things that are important in the webinar. Before we get started, if you don't know me, I definitely do want you to understand a little bit of my background as well, because I'll be guiding you through this conversation with Dr. Yeckel and learning some things about a revolutionary product called Generation UCAN Superstarch. It's a product that I've been using for myself and within my private practice in Dallas, Texas, for the last 6 years with professional, collegiate, Olympic athletes that span all age groups. It's very exciting because this revolutionary superstarch can really help us to understand how we get through all of our age groups with extra energy. These are things that people are most concerned about, correct? So we want to set the stage first for understanding, and then I'm going to dive in and have Dr. Yeckel take it over as far as explaining to us some of the science behind the things that matter to women. And what it all boils down to, basically, is that women in general, across all age groups, and I've dealt with hundreds of women and spoken in front of groups of thousands of people, is body composition. We're not vain, ladies. It's just that we have so much information at our fingertips and a lot of things out there in social media that we're trying to keep up. We're trying to keep up our figures, our appearance, and most important, along with that, we know if we do that we'll stay healthy as we're aging. And besides that, when we're talking about body composition, being healthy and youthful and eating the way that we should and having those steady blood sugar and steady energy, it promotes overall health. And we're talking about preventing disease. So these are the things that Dr. Yeckel has really dedicated her career to, is how do we take these things and prevent diseases. Second thing, I get it all the time. I'm telling you, ladies, 99.9% of you come to me and tell me my energy level is on the floor and I want to know how to pick it up. I'm expected to do it all, right? We are expected to be out in the workforce, career women at all age groups. We have women still in their 60s and even 70s out there as breadwinners, career women, but we're also expected to be homemakers, whether we're raising children or not. We also, older women also might be taking care of aging parents, and we're supposed to be all of this, what was the Ginger Rogers phrase, dancing backwards and in heels. So we want to know, how are energy levels affected as we age? What happens to our energy levels? How do we keep them up? This is really super exciting stuff, and I know we're going to change a lot of people's lives tonight. Dr. Yeckel, tell us, just to jump in, when we're talking to women, we're talking, there are some major differences between men and women, and how they're burning energy, how they're using energy. What are some overarching themes these ladies need to know tonight about how to understand that difference between men and women?
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here this evening. And as to this first question, I think there are a couple of some very fundamental points, and they've been able to be looked at quite extensively in these big national trials with thousands of people. And one of the things that we know is that men consume more energy than women. And this is even after we've adjusted for things like fat-free mass, which means that men are basically more inefficient when it comes to energy. And so what that translates to us as ladies is the fact that we can't eat as much. We are just too efficient with our calories. And so even when you reduce your dietary intake more than men to achieve the same kind of weight loss. So say you go head to head with a friend of yours, or a spouse or a boyfriend or whatever, and you end up trying to lose the same amount of weight, you're going to have to do more, whether it's more exercise or reduce your energy intake further to achieve the same kind of results as the men. It's easier for them because
it doesn't really seem fair, does it?
No, it's really not fair. And then women will also lose less fat. So, as we know, that the big differences between men and women is that we have more body fat. So, and we tend to hold on to it. So that's a big difference as well. And then women increase fat mass even without sometimes changing energy intake or exercise. So we know that from situations like pregnancy or sort of that perimenopausal condition where all of a sudden it's like blip, you have fat, and you're like, where did this come from? I've been doing the exact same things. So those are real challenges that face women compared to men, and certainly even if we don't feel like we need to compare to men, they're real challenges for us throughout our lifespan.
So, Dr. Yeckel, you made some great points there. Unfortunately, it's not good news for us women. Like I said, it doesn't seem fair. I would say that I probably noticed this when I was, 12 or 13 years old. My older brother, who was only 2 years older, could come home and eat bread and half a pound of roast beef and not gain an ounce. And, I'd look at food and gain weight. And I've dealt with a lot of even girls at that age who are starting to learn that same issue as well. What happens if we take that as an issue, that we can't really go head to head and expect to lose 12 pounds in a week like sometimes men do? What happens as we age? Is it worse? Does it get worse over time? I would imagine that it would. And what does that look like as far as the energy intake and exercise? And we're doing regular exercise. Can we get on top of things?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. One is that basically by the time men and women are at around 20, we're starting to really lose a little bit of our energy abilities in terms of expenditure, about 1 to 2% per decade, and that can accelerate over time. And what does that mean? That means for women, because we're already worse off than men and we don't get any better, right? So between 20 and 30, that may translate to like 150 calories a day that you now can't eat simply because you're aging. And then this accelerates with age. So it's what a problem right from the start, that our resting, that basal metabolic rate, that when you talk about sort of that basal metabolism, that is decreasing over time. And the nice thing, though, on the flip side, even though that's decreasing over time, you can put in exercise to try to combat it a little bit. So this is a figure, if everybody has a screen to even look at, that I have energy intake on the left and energy expenditure on the right. And you can see from energy intake, we're thinking, oh, okay, energy balance is really simple, right? We eat less or exercise more, but you can see from all these little bubbles that there's actually a lot that goes into it. So if you look on the energy intake side, you have this lean mass that's telling you, that's giving you sort of this fasting level of hunger in a sense. It's very much tied to hunger cues. And then you have, of course, work, family, cultural habits, these kinds of things. And then you have what's really starting to be a new area of research, which is the fat mass that's sort of attached to sort of inhibition or disinhibition of food intake. And then you have the signals from your gut. And on the right, what's happening is that you have this resting metabolic expenditure, which is that RMR. That's the biggest bubble. That's so much of your energy for the day just has to do with just subsistence living, if you will. And then, you'll see to the right there, there's physical activity, and NEAT is called non-exercise activity, so the fidgeting kind of activity. That's 20 to 35% of your daily expenditure. Now that's what you can control. And then that little bubble up above is the thermic effect of food, it's called. And that's just sort of when you're blowing off steam. You can see it in wee little babies when they turn all red after they eat, because they have a very, very high ability to get rid of some of those calories just by burning them off right away. But as we age, we kind of lose that. Our resting metabolic rate is going down, in part tied to that lean mass bubble. We're losing lean mass over time, and that is what we can sort of try to counteract with exercise. In a sense, for women, your best friend forever should be exercise. In one way, shape, or form. It's something you should do throughout your life.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you actually gave us some hope, because it's not just, oh, well, you need to take in less calories every decade, 150 less calories every day. That can get to be a lot we're talking about, and this was that other component that's so important. People that have low energy, they're feeling that they don't have a lot of energy, maybe not sleeping well. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And they're feeling like, gosh, I'm hungry all the time just to keep energy there. So how am I supposed to cut food? These are the people that come to see me. When actually, you're saying on the right side of that, if I'm not mistaken, these are things that you can control, and you can work on increasing that RMR, even nominally. You certainly can work on physical activity to an extent, and that's extremely important. So I like the fact that you some hope there. That's really great. Let me ask you a question, because then there's sometimes people that come to see me in my practice who they say, and I look at their food diaries, and they say, gosh, I work out like a beast. And these are women of all ages, and they say, I'm working out really hard, and I might be burning, 500 or 600 calories. And then I see after that was their morning workout, and they've gone to getting coffee and donuts afterwards. And a lot of times they might say, well, I earned it. I earned that coffee and donuts because it just burned 500 calories. So why can't I have those extra calories? But we're talking about overcompensating by having too many calories. That, like you said, energy in versus energy expenditure, and how the body actually reacts to that, and over different age groups. Can you talk to a little bit about that theory? And obviously, we definitely have some recommendations for you of the things you can do instead of a donut after a workout. But what happens when we overcompensate?
Yeah, I think there's two things that are good for women to know, and this is another comparison between men. If you were to give both men and women say a yogurt, so a sort of a fixed amount, everybody kind of knows what it is, it's in a certain size container, the men later in the day will compensate for that energy. But the women, if this is an extra amount of calories, the women will only compensate about 70%, which means that they're overeating during the day. So we're already not quite as good. And then what this slide shows us is that in general, overall, when we exercise, and we don't know, we just know that we've exercised a certain amount of time, and the little bar says actual 200 calories. We've only actually burned 200 kilocalories. And then what they've done is say, okay, we'll estimate how many calories you've just burned. Of course, you can see with those huge error bars that people have no idea what they've burned in terms of energy. And also what they'll do is they'll tend to eat twice as much. So as you can see, in some ways, they kind of eat pretty close to what they estimate they've expended. It's just nowhere near the reality. And so I think one of the things that we have to come to grips with is that food is a really bad reward, and particularly a bad reward for women, I think. I know so many women who have gained weight training for a marathon just because they think it's a good license to eat. And we just don't work that way.
I remember years ago when I started to do some group fitness classes, the woman next to me, she said, well, honey, I'm just here to work out and burn some calories so I can eat a little bit more. And what you're saying, I think, resonates with so many people. I've seen some studies too that women actually believe that they're burning more calories than they are. So when you see that 200 calories that they've actually burned, a lot of times they're looking at, you know, a piece of exercise equipment, whether it's a treadmill or an exercise bike or something that's not taking into account who they are as women and how much they're actually burning. And it's less than what it says on the screen. So you leave there thinking, oh, I just burned 500 calories, eat what I want. And actually it's much less than that. So we probably need to watch that too, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think one good point you just made, the statement that, you know, people often say, you know, I sort of the saying exercise to eat, right? And I think there is a point to that too, though, because as you age and you're losing that resting metabolic rate and you do need to exercise more, it becomes more of a reality in the sense that you really do have to exercise in order to eat. When the 70-year-old women are at 1,000 calories a day for only, that's all they get for the resting metabolic, for that big bubble.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't add exercise in, they're not eating anything. It's like, here's your cracker for the day, honey. It's horrible.
Right.
In fact,
And they feel like that too.
in fact, one of the great studies that's been done recently is this study where they actually looked at steps per day. And now, if for everybody who does their 10,000 steps and they look at it from a 10,000 perspective, one of the things that's been nice is that they've shown that with adults that there's a lot of cardiovascular and a lot of benefit to sort of once you're above 7,000 steps a day. But 10,000 starts to really come into play with sort of the, you know, energy balance and weight control. And certainly what's sad here, and this just exemplifies the fact that the resting metabolic rates are going down, is that if you're talking about older women in particular, you actually look at those. The only ones that are normal body weight in terms of BMI are the ones doing greater than 12,500 steps a day. And to me, what that says as an exercise physiologist is that their speed at which in other words, they're probably not adding in intensity. So there's a law of diminishing returns in a sense that yes, they're getting those steps, and it's probably taking them a long time to accomplish those steps. I threw in Varun throw in another figure here for us, just because they've done this now in the adults in the U.S. population as well as kids in the U.S. population, and both graphs basically look the same way here. And on the x-axis down there, it's basically how fast you're walking, or slow as the case may be. And what you're seeing is 1 to 59 steps per minute. In other words, that's just 1 step per second. So if you were to count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, it would be only 1 foot, 2 feet, 3, you know, it's really slow. So most of the hours per day that they're doing any kind of activity at all, it's actually very slow. So even those 10,000 steps, even if you're getting them, that's fantastic. I'm not trying to trivialize that at all. But I think the realization, and the kids should even be faster here, is that we're actually, the walking speeds need to pick up. And so my tip to all of you is basically, you know, it's the 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. That means that you're back to the same foot already. So it's, it's every single time you hit a number, you're also hitting, say, your left foot. Start with your left foot, and so it's, or the old military count. So left, 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 right, left. That's the right cadence, actually. So you can use these little tricks to make sure that you're actually walking fast enough, and that starts to move you to the right on here and put more time when you're actually working at a slightly higher intensity.
Well, this is fantastic information too, because I know you don't want to trivialize when someone tells you, oh, I just hit 10,000 steps today, but I did it through kind of puttering around the house, and my house will know that it wasn't a fast pace, picking up the pace. And also we know from studies and a little bit of research on that 10,000 steps, it was an arbitrary number to start with. So that actually more, and like you said, a faster pace. This is the side of things about exercise and increasing those ways that you can burn calorie. We're definitely going to talk about nutrition here for a moment and tie all of that together. It has to do with your body composition and your fat-free mass and those sorts of things. We would definitely want to tie that in together. Here in a second about fatigue and that kind of tiredness that's pervasive. But is there anything else, Dr. Yeckel, that we really need to know that's key here, because this is excellent information that we need to know as women about our exercise, or how we can kind of rebalance that expenditure a little bit?
Well, I think, this is classic data that's being shown right here on the slide, and it's from the 50s, and you may laugh at that, but in a sense, it's this data that really shows that if you're doing light to heavy exercise, you're actually in that darker blue line as a flat body weight. In other words, people are really well able to maintain an even body weight when they're doing light to heavy exercise. In other words, their activities, their work, their daily life is very either very light or very heavy. And obviously, once it's in the light zone, it's starting to get hard. And then when you see it in the sedentary zone, the body doesn't know what to do. So you're basically, we don't appropriately decrease our intake of energy. We actually increase it. And so you gain weight. And I think there's another point to this slide that's really important for people. And you can see to the right as you go from light, moderate, and heavy, and you can see how the normal response is the body will actually require you to eat more. And that just makes sense, right? If you're burning more calories, the body is going to say, okay, you got to take in more calories. We want to be, the body wants to be stable. So, but that just exemplifies the fact of how hard it is to keep weight off when you're challenging this whole inner workings of the body that's saying no, eat more, when in reality you're trying to lose weight and do more activity. So it's really good to keep in mind that you really are having to play games with your metabolism. On the intake side, you're really having to show a lot of what's called cognitive restraint. You're having to know that under emotional stress, are you somebody that becomes completely disinhibited and just eats crazily? Are you somebody in social situations that tends to eat crazily during those times? So we know that tends to be patterned with fat mass. And so, and the more active you are, there's the tendency to have better control over those kinds of crazy urges. But it's good for women to know that it's both sides, because work, life, everything can get in the way and can cause a real problem in terms of balancing both the energy intake and the energy expenditure.
Well, and I think that this is such an extremely important slide, because if you're in your 20s and you're trying to decide, hey, you know what, for the first time in my life here, I really want to dig in, and after we gain the freshman 15 in college perhaps, and I really want to dig in and I want to be healthier and I want to increase my activity, this slide is showing so clearly, as you pointed out, really still have to watch your intake as well. But then, oh my goodness, if you happen to be a woman who's perimenopausal, menopausal, at that end of the spectrum, these are women who are coming to me and they'll call me on the phone and say, oh my gosh, I used to be 120 pounds my whole life, and all of a sudden I've gained all this weight and I don't know what to do about it, because also their ability to burn over the years, as you pointed out, is going down as well, but they're also increasing a little bit more of their intake. That's really significant at every age, but especially so as we get older. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, and I think it happens sort of at both ends actually, because we know that, and particularly with girls, that the minute they enter high school, their activity drops way down. And when they go, and that sort of persists through that college, so that it's easy to have a situation where all of a sudden you're not adjusting for the fact that you're not active. So your intake is automatically too high. And on this slide, what it's showing you is the fact that sitting is basically your muscles flatlined. So I love this
Oh,
slide because
no.
it basically shows you that you have to be physically inefficient. And it's something that everyone should post above their desk. Get up, get down all the time. Don't be in one position, because this is just happens to be the electrical activity of muscle. And you know, the muscle is going to just conserve. Obviously, it's flatlined. So under times when it doesn't need to do anything, it's just puttering along. And that's your main tissue to really ramp up, particularly for women, to ramp up fat oxidation. It is like, if you want to be burning off those calories that are stored, that's the tissue to do it. So you certainly don't want it sitting there flatlined. And that's unfortunately what happens when we sit at work for a long time, sit and study for a long time. So constantly, that the rule of thumb now is every 10 or 20 minutes or so, get up, move around. You'll think better anyway. Keep thinking, sit back down, and get to work again. But I think you'll find that you actually focus better than just sitting, grinding it out.
And I can imagine everyone's thinking now we need one of those standing walking treadmill desks where we can very slowly throughout the day. And I think that there's something to be said there.
Yeah, but even that, I think I think most people, they haven't caught on that well, in part because they're difficult, right? You're having, particularly if you're typing and trying to walk. And
Right,
but
yes.
I think just everyone should keep in mind that the get up and get down, just be physically inefficient. I think we spent a lot of time thinking we need to be so efficient in our movements. And unfortunately, that really hurts us. This is the non-exercise activity thermogenesis that I was talking about. It's that NEAT, and you really, really want it to be robust, particularly for fat
When you're
oxidation.
talking about being, yeah, and when you're talking about being inefficient, are you discussing kind of this mindset that we have that at the end of the day we need to go and work out for an hour and a half, whereas actually the workout's great, but throughout the day we should be doing something as well? Because that gives us a little bit of hope here when you see something as simple as just getting up for a minute, standing up, maybe doing some little stretches and clear your head a little bit and get back to work. You're giving us then some hope there, right? That we can actually do something better ourselves than just waiting for 8 hours just to go work out.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a combination. I don't think you should undersell the little bits during the day that matter. And yes, those might have slower speeds to your steps or something. But the idea that you're doing a lot, just sort of, I commute in terms of, I walk to catch the shuttle, and I play a game, right? I don't tend to walk very far to catch the shuttle, but on coming home, I try to walk further. I try to make it so that I'm not going to catch the shuttle until I go an extra couple of stops before I catch it. So and then I run when I get home, and I get in the door, I change, and I go back out. But a lot of that has to do with family and what's happening around you. But I think it's really good to count both types of activity, because they both really matter in the day. Um, I don't know, do you want me to go
Yeah,
right into
absolutely.
this? Sure. So one of the
Oh, for
things that
sure. Yes.
we tend to particularly work, but studying, there's all sorts of conditions, poor sleep, new baby, caring for a parent, there's all sorts of things that lead to stress. And I think one of the things that's really important here is the fact that, one, movement does matter, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what I wanted to show here is the fact that if you were to give everybody just sort of a standard, give them a glass of juice, basically, if you're in the non-stress condition, your blood sugar doesn't go up very far. But if you're in the stress condition, and this is just some data that I had to throw up just so you could get an example. This is a young, healthy woman. This isn't somebody, you know, that has glucose problems, but it just shows you how dynamic a stress condition can be. Now, if this were data, if these were data showing somebody that was older, you would basically have the person maybe starting at that stress level and going up even further. So many of our older population now has what's called prediabetes. And so they actually have a really volatile amount of blood sugar in response to having some simple carbs like this. So it's really good to realize that oftentimes you've got a hard day ahead of you and you've really stressed, and then you say, okay, I'm going to reward myself with a cookie or a cupcake or whatever. You're better off taking a walk really quickly and then seeing if you want that cookie or cupcake, because basically it really is throwing your glucose off and your blood sugar off. So glucose and blood sugar I'm talking about is the same thing here. So it's actually a time when you should stay away from sweets.
This is really monumental research here, and it's right in black and white, right in front of us. The things that I've been saying too, just in practice, is to say, and if you're looking at that curve, my goodness, the stressed one, it goes up to 160 for your blood sugar. Those are definitely diabetic ranges. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're if you're a non-diabetic person, obviously your blood sugar is not going to stay there, but you put your body under a lot of stress to release the hormone insulin to try and cover that spike in blood sugar, whereas if you're not stressed, you're not going to have much as a response. So definitely couldn't agree more with getting outside and getting some exercise too. One of these things that can also raise unfortunately, the cravings for sweets is chronic fatigue. So we definitely want to talk about the energy levels at this point and bring in how nutrition can also help that, and how what we do at Generation UCAN can also help stabilize these blood sugar issues. So we're not seeing that big spike that we saw there a moment ago. So I want you to know in general, just for all you ladies out there, a lot of times what I hear when people come to see me is, well, I'm sure I must have this thing called chronic fatigue syndrome. And it really, when you see that it affects more than 1 million Americans, that's a lot of people. But when you consider that we have 300 million people in this country, actually clinically diagnosed as affecting people as much as just intermittent fatigue. You're tired a day or at certain times of the day. It's not something that completely drags you down. It can be caused by a lot of different things, chronic fatigue syndrome, but what we see with just being tired is that it can be caused by a number of things, and I call it kind of getting trapped in a hole. You're not sleeping well because you're stressed out, and as we saw in that last slide, you're stressed out and you might be eating things that are high in sugar, unfortunately. Then you're well, you might be waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. People think that I'm some sort of mind reader because I can figure out that people wake up at that time. It's just that time of the night where your blood sugar's out of whack. You haven't gotten what your body really desires, which is healthy food during the daytime. You're not sleeping well. You wake up and it starts the whole process over again. But the really crazy thing that we've also learned too, that goes along piggyback what you were saying too about eating these high sugary or not so great things for us when we're stressed out, is that it can affect our hormone levels as well when we're not sleeping well. So unfortunately, what happens when our hormone levels take a hit is that we're increasing certain hormones that make us happier, or that will blunt the amount of satiety or fullness that we feel. So we don't feel full because we're tired, we haven't been sleeping well. Does this describe any of you out there? Because I know a lot of people come to me and they're just tired all the time, and they say, well, I'm tired and I'm eating these things that aren't so great for me, but it's, and women, goodness, we really beat ourselves up for this. We say, and I hear it all the time, if I had a dime for every time I hear it, I can't control myself. I have no self-control. My coworker has a bowl of Hershey Kisses on her desk, and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I can't control myself. Well, it's not that, ladies. It's actually that if you're not sleeping well at night, it increases. And if you look at that second point down, it increases something called ghrelin, which is that hormone stimulating appetite. But look what I put after that. It also increases your cravings for high carbohydrate foods. So that goes directly into that, last slide that with the graph that we saw about being stressed out as well and eating high carbohydrate or sugary foods or things that would spike our blood sugar. So we really got to watch out. Got to get our sleep under control. We definitely have to make better choices in the moment, and I say before that actually happens, before you get in that situation where you feel like you're going to eat the paint off the walls and you say, okay, I'm just going to eat my coworker's candy. So we definitely, this is where it gets exciting for me, because for the past 6 years since I found out about Generation UCAN, I've been recommending it to people almost every single day on a daily basis. And I use it myself for blood sugar stabilization. We'll talk a little bit about what it's used for now and how it can help benefit and bring you out of that hole where you're having those cravings for sugary sweets. And anecdotally, many people tell me that it helps them sleep a little bit better because the blood sugar is regulated. So when we talk about Generation UCAN, Dr. Yeckel, will we start there? I want to know from you, how did you hear about UCAN, and when did you start to understand what is this thing called super starch that Generation UCAN created, and kind of the background of it? Where did you hear about it?
I heard about it through a colleague that was involved right through the beginning, because this is really a grassroots company. And if some of you don't know the story, it's really an encouraging story, because it really is about a little boy who can't produce his own sugar. So this is a severe illness. It's an inborn error of metabolism, it's called, and so a child is born with it. It's called glycogen storage disease, and this is not like diabetes in the sense that the kids cannot produce their own sugar. So the family went around and really tried to find something so that they weren't having to wake up every 2 hours to make sure that JONAH, in this case, and many children like him, would just completely plummet and go into hypoglycemia, and you can die from that. So this was the constant battle until they found an engineer a chemical engineer that was able to create this moisture heat processing of a starch out of corn, and it's called super starch. And it's remarkable. When I heard about it, and I just thought, oh, if a starch can persist that long and allow these kids to actually spend 8 hours asleep and not have to get up, that just tells you that this is sort of this natural, slow releasing formulation of sugar, so that the blood can stay nice and steady. It doesn't need to, it can basically, come in almost undetected, so that you don't need lots of insulin. So it helps people with diabetes too. It takes the burden off the pancreas, and it allows, these kids, but everybody else too. I mean, I use it as well. I use it at lunchtime and run in the afternoon and not have to do anything in between. So it's one of those things that's just this wonderful, slowly digestible starch that allows you to have steady blood sugar. And you can see the difference in this graph. The red is the super starch formula, and the blue is this maltodextrin, so more of a simple carbohydrate. And you can see it just doesn't peak your glucose. It comes in very, very gradually, so that people can just it comes in under the radar, basically.
A lot of people will tell me after they've tried it too, that kind of energy source is a calming, it's just a feeling of calm, steady energy. And I think that's a great word to describe it, because if you're on a roller coaster, kind of these peaks and valleys of blood sugar, and a lot of times you might not even be in tune with the fact that you're doing that to your bodies, and oh, well, it's just, like I said, just a Hershey Kiss or whatever, I'm having a cookie in the afternoon. If you're not in tune with how that makes you feel afterwards, I definitely recommend, and I have for years, that people try UCAN even just for 7 days, just even once a day, just to see the difference when you feel how good it makes you feel. And like you said, Dr. Yeckel, you're having it at lunchtime. I'm sure what happens to you is that you're just having that steady energy like you see in that graph for several hours, and you can get your work done and you just feel great. A lot of times people will use it before they exercise because it gives them great energy and they're not hitting that wall that they normally might hit. And it just, and this is anecdotal as far as mental focus, concentration, brain fog. These are things that occur when you are on that roller coaster of blood sugar. Maybe not eating, what you should have for lunch, and then everybody's getting that 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just total crash. We think we're all bored and hate our jobs, and it's not that. It's that you ladies need to have some sort of stable energy throughout the day, and you'll feel so much better. You'll get your work done better. It's just my experience working with people throughout the years. I definitely want to talk about people in your life too, Dr. Yeckel, are using UCAN. I mentioned before, workout as well. You can use it as a meal replacement. What are people in your experience, how are they using UCAN? And I'll also a little bit about some ways that you can use it, and a few recipes and things here. What ways have you noticed that people are using UCAN?
Well, I think, for a variety of activities, if you're going to use it to help your blood sugar stay steady during the activity, that's fantastic. It's just a lot less work for your system. And one of the key things for women is the fact that we are really good fat burners during exercise. And so this does not make it so that you are moving away from fat oxidation and toward carbohydrate oxidation. So if you were to take in a goo or one of these kinds of things, or a sports drink or juice or whatever, anything like that is a simple carb, you're going to shift over. And so you are going to lose the benefit of exercise from a burning of those storage fat calories. If you're basically putting in glucose, that's how it works. Glucose is going to make itself want to be used. And if you use something like the superstarch has such a slow profile for glucose that you can keep burning fat. And for women, that is our magic bullet for sure. And in fact, unfortunately, during recovery, one of the things that happens is we're so efficient that our fatty acid delivery goes down very, very quickly. And so men have this huge burn afterwards for hours and hours and hours. Well, women, we kind of go back to our norm. And a lot of that is because we don't have the delivery of fatty acids. And the beautiful thing about UCAN is that it keeps up the delivery of fatty acids because it's not blocking. That insulin is not hurting the fat cell and saying, turn off your supply of fatty acids. So I think it's really good to keep in mind as women that one of the ways that we burn fat most effectively is during exercise. And you can maximize that if you're not taking in something that's a simple carb. And UCAN doesn't hurt that at all. In fact, it promotes it. And also during recovery or other times if you were to take in a carb snack, you are going to instantly switch from your fat burning potential to carbs. And so the UCAN really, really, really helps to put you into your most effective, keeps you in that most effective fat burning glow, if you like, so that you can deplete your own stores.
Well, I think that most of the audience just sat up and took notice and started to listen when you mentioned fat burning, because this is a struggle for women, is actually what do we do to help increase that fat burn? Like you said, men might not have those same issues that we do, and it is challenging for a lot of people. And because blood sugar stays lower, you're not getting that spike in energy. And this could even be a bar or a piece of fruit before you work out, and that can spike your blood sugar. You're crashing. I just speak from experience working with hundreds of people and trainers, and what is such a challenge for a lot of people. They get through 20 or 30 minutes of their workout and they're tired because of all the things that we were saying to juggle as well as women, and they're not getting that steady energy. And unfortunately, when they get that spike from the things that they traditionally ate before a workout or even throughout the day, you're getting a spike in your blood sugar. As we saw in the graph, you're getting a spike in your insulin because of it, and that's not fat burning mode. So it's really, really important, as Dr. Yeckel says, to keep yourself in that fat burning mode. So I definitely want to tell you all who are listening, you can certainly ask us questions. I'm going to leave a few minutes here at the end in case you have any questions. We'll take them in the essence of time. Hopefully we'll have enough time to answer your questions, and for sure you can always ask them on our Facebook page, which is Generation UCAN. And then, but I definitely want to talk about some practical applications. Is it just for pre-workout? Is what a lot of people might think, especially if they see UCAN sold in various gyms or for that purpose, or a friend told them about it before they work out. It's great for women because we don't need very much, maybe just a scoop, depending on the size person you are and also how long you're going to be working out. But for a standard group fitness class or an exercise that might last an hour, you'd probably need about a scoop. And the nice thing is then you're not hungry, or your workout, you're not hungry as in you want to eat the paint off the walls. You're actually feeling pretty good and then can go and eat something, whether it's a regular meal or what have you. The other way that you can use it, and I've used it with a number of women, especially my perimenopausal and menopausal and postmenopausal females, is to use it as a shake, in a shake, for controlling your blood sugar. And again, like Dr. Yeckel said, controlling that fat burn for that 75, 90 minutes of time where it keeps your blood sugar stable. What I've noticed in practice is it will keep people with energy for a solid, we're looking at a great recipe here. If you're doing a recipe like this, you have a 3 hours of energy, steady energy, and this is fat burning energy. And this is where, and that's anecdotal, it might last you a little bit longer, it might not last you as long. However, what we're not seeing, and Dr. Yeckel, you can talk about this too, is not seeing that wall that people are hitting where all of a sudden you just crash. So this is a great recipe as well. We have tons of recipes online at our website too. Can you tell us, Dr. Yeckel, about kind of that crash and why we're not getting that crash with UCAN? It just kind of slowly drifts away, the energy, you start to get hungry, and then you go and eat something, and it's not a desperation situation. Is there a science behind that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that factor in. If you the flip side is what keys you into some of these, is that if you were to take in, like you saw that stress graph, or this graph right here with the maltodextrin, when you shoot your blood sugar up that high, and then obviously it's sort of like a swing set, right? You push the person on the swing, they have to come back, and they usually go back further. So basically what happens is that everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, when you have that steep a descent, your body thinks you're going to maybe become hypoglycemic. So everyone wants to eat again. It's one of those things that just, it's evolutionary ingrained in us to want to. Whereas if you can keep a very, very slow response, you basically can protect yourself from that. All of a sudden, all of the counter-regulation that the brain is telling you to eat, you won't have that if you just have these slow, steady changes. And so that's probably the biggest reason that, and in reality, it isn't just 3 hours, it's longer, because the molecule is so, it's one of these big molecules that it just gets chipped away a little bit at a time for a long time. And so it just gradually leaves, and then all of a sudden you're sort of aware that's like, oh, many hours have passed. I mean, I often use it as a shake for lunch, just as a meal replacement. We know from years of research, I mean, they have like 7-year prospective, 10-year prospective trials now with meal replacements are really good at sort of keeping weight, for people who are trying to just use weight control. This for me is awesome, because not only is it giving me a meal replacement in the middle of the day, but I can go home and I can run at the end, and I don't have to do anything. It's still there. It's gone so slowly. It's just kept my blood sugar stable. So I know people that use it to prevent their blood sugar from going low during exercise. I know people who use it as sort of a shake. So when they're traveling, travel is awesome. The bars or the shakes, when you just, on the plane, you're not going to be able to eat for hours and hours. It's one of those things that's when I'm teaching anything that or you have an hours to go and you want stable blood sugar, it's a real go-to snack in my mind. And I wouldn't even call it a snack, but the snack bars are awesome too.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely something to keep in mind. I think I've taken over 70 trips in the last 3 years, and I never, ever leave the house without UCAN. You just don't, and it doesn't matter if you're going to jump on a flight somewhere and you don't know if you're going to get stranded somewhere on a layover, or if you're just leaving the house and you don't know how long you're going to be in your commute. I mean, it's just really good to plan ahead and have something on board that will give you that steady energy. So I definitely recommend for people, if they don't really understand how their blood sugar is being affected by those fast sugar choices that they're making, try the UCAN for 7 days and try, life without it, and you're going to really notice and start to be in tune with what that's going to do for you. Could we go back to the other slide real quick, which is about the shake and the recipe that we have for the shake? Because as a dietitian, I definitely want to point out a couple of things that you should know about the shake. So you see on here that we have unsweetened almond milk. It's really important that you, and also half a banana. I would say even you can do a little bit less than that as well. And in that case, what we're looking at is not including things that will spike your blood sugar. So if you're a person who has 2 cups of fruit in your shake, we're talking about really decreasing that to about a quarter cup of berries or a quarter of a banana, half a banana, in order not to spike your blood sugar, and not the sweetened almond milk, but the unsweetened variety, because we don't want that blood sugar spike. The UCAN is your carbohydrate source. So as long as we keep it that, we add in some healthy fats. You can add in some natural peanut butter. Ladies, if you're trying to control your calories, you can leave out the avocado and keep it just the way it is without the avocado, and you're right at around 250 calories. If you're super busy, like I am, single mom with 2 kids, you're running out the door in the morning after you've made their lunches, made their breakfast, and we're sort of an afterthought for ourselves. These whip up in just minutes, less than minutes of time, super quick, and like Dr. Yeckel said, will last you hours and hours of time. It gives you that beautiful sustained energy. And if you happen to be taking care of an aging parent, for example, there's a lot of issues that come in with focus and having that steady energy. So this can also really help as something if you're, like I said, taking care of an aging parent, or maybe you yourself are trying to watch your body composition and you're a younger person who's in their 20s and 30s, just really super busy and would normally skip, because I hear this a lot, I'm just not hungry, so you might skip these meals. And in this case, the reason not to skip is because you're actually feeding your brain some of that sustained carbohydrate, but you're also in fat burning mode, as Dr. Yeckel said. So I think that these are some really great tips. Dr. Yeckel, is there anything else that we didn't cover that we want to kind of pull everything together? Any closing thoughts? And again, I would recommend you all, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask on your chat there. Dr. Yeckel, is there anything else that we haven't covered?
I think it's just to emphasize that just by itself this works really well with minimal calories, and so it's not adding calories so much to your day, it's improving the quality so that you're not ending up eating excess calories just to try to keep your blood sugar stable, because the body keeps driving for that, right? It's homeostasis. So it works really well with this whole program of sort of, okay, I want to be active, but I also want to keep my blood sugar stable so that I feel good. So it's like they completely work together, and they work together in such a way that you're not adding all these excess calories. And women just can't afford them. I mean, I think the quality nutrition is huge for women, and it gets more and more so as you age. So that would be what I would emphasize.
Well, I think all of this information has been really, really great. The research that you presented has been amazing, and I would say so that hopefully someone heard some information today that was helpful for them. You can actually catch more of our webinars and when they are announced on our Generation UCAN Facebook page. We actually have a couple of webinars coming up that are fantastic, again, for National Women's Health Week. We have a special focus on women. Tomorrow we're going to be talking to pro runner Tina Muir about periods. Her, a lot of elite runners, and I see this even in the 13-year-olds and on up. If they're elite runners, a lot of times they're not getting menses. So what do you do about that? How to conquer that and tackle that? We're talking on Wednesday we're talking about training as a new mom. When should you start training? How much? What kind of training? And Dr. Yeckel is actually going to come back and talk with us about that training as a new mom aspect, which I think is huge, and also how to tie UCAN along in with that. And then we're also talking later in the week about fueling for women athletes. And I always say, if you are making a conscious effort to really work out and be an active person, you are an athlete, and to own that and to definitely, tune in to that one as well. You'll get all of the webinar. If you've subscribed to this one, if you've registered for this webinar, then you'll get all of the notifications for the other webinars as well. But please do, if you found value in this, if it's helpful for someone, even if we've shared, please do share this with other people and let them know. You can still register, and all of that information, again, is on the UCAN Facebook page. Dr. Yeckel, my goodness, I don't know what to say. You gave us so much really excellent information that was absolutely eye-opening. I know it helped so many people today. I really appreciate you being on. I can't wait to do the next webinar with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and it was wonderful to be on with you, Karin. And it's just wonderful that UCAN sponsors these. They've, done National Women's Health Week webinars several times, and I just, there aren't too many organizations that do them, and I think it's terrific. So thank you.
That is absolutely so true. Well, I thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you have any questions too, feel free to come on over to our UCAN page, Generation UCAN, over at Facebook, and we will see you on our webinar tomorrow night. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks for listening, everyone.